Good afternoon. Bill Gates once said, content is king. You're familiar with the quote. You may be familiar with the follow-up quote, the rebound quote, right? Content is king, distribution is queen, and she wears the pants. I think there's a lot of talk in our industry about content and distribution, how they go together, and a lot of emphasis on distribution and metrics and AI and programmatic, etc., etc., etc. You will also agree with me that great distribution of bad content is a bad idea. I would argue with you that even good content, which many of us seem to agree is needed today, much to my relief, is also not enough. That the world is changing so fast, and the environment that we compete is so radically different of 5 or 2 years ago, that good content doesn't cut it, that you need purposeful content. And by purpose, I don't mean the nice CSR practice of your company, nor I mean, the nice charity marketing-led event that you do with the leftover budget of this year. I mean something that is not even only the marketer's job. I'm talking about how does your brand and your behavior in content drives the meaning of your company and your enterprise. I'm Ricardo Pimenta. I'm VP Nutrition for Pepsico. And within the next 20 minutes or so, I'll try to take you through some of these changes that I think are affecting the way we should frame content from now on. And I'll talk to you a little bit about how Pepsico is addressing some of these issues. And time permitting, I will take you through a little bit of a case study on one of the brands I lead in Latin America. So let's get on. First thing, August the 1st was Earth Overshoot Day, right? So this is the day in which we consumed all the resources the planet is able to give us in one given year, right? In other words, right now, we're all living in borrowed resources for the next generation, right? I hope you understand the stakes here are very, very high. We're not talking about minor stuff. We're talking about the survival of humankind as we know it, about the future of my kids, your kids. There is no other alternative for business to understand what is the impact of environmental changes in our business model, and particularly with the rise of the word sustainability, which is a word used today as a commodity, and I'll argue very strongly must be very connected to the very core of your business. The second thing that is changing very fast is that local is cool again. Now, I grew up in a world where global was cool, right? I saw the fall of the Berlin Wall. I'm old enough to have seen that. I have seen the redemocratization of Latin America and all the economic booms and busts, and booms and busts. And you've seen the rise of Asia and the rise of China. Global was cool, right? As a young marketer, the coolest thing you could see was the new Nike ad, the new Pepsi ad, the new Gatorade ad. That was an advantage for global brands. What few of us have predicted, and is happening as we speak, is that partially driven by those who are left out of the benefits of globalization, partly driven by the fact that globalization has the sense of lack of belonging or identity, that local became the new thing. And we see that across the spectrum. We see that in political movements. We see that through the rise of the new nationalism. We see that through the rise of local brands all around the world. The biggest challenge to global brands like the one we run at Pepsico is the rise of local rooted brands. We have no alternative but to reframe the way we think about global brands. Global is still important, but it certainly doesn't drive the advantage that once did. This one is rather obvious, right? Technology is everywhere. Moore's law is so common that at this point it's probably taught at law school. The cycle of consumer adoption of innovation is shorter and shorter, from television to computers. So you all have seen this slide before, right? In my household, a crisis is not anymore defined by dinner's late, but is defined by there's no Wi-Fi. Major crisis. We all seen the rise of big tech, right? Amazon, Apple, $1 trillion valuations, Facebook, Google, I would add Netflix to the bunch, a couple of other emerging ones, redefines the way we get content to the marketplace. Even our models of distribution are strongly affected by the fact that the access to audiences are strongly controlled by very few players. All of these add up to this particular point, which is our businesses everywhere are being redefined. In the word of a few authors, the abused word is disrupted, right? Because of many reasons. Cost of entry has gone dramatically down. You want to get to your product to the marketplace? Amazon can list it for you. You want to talk to a specific audience? Give Facebook a call, give YouTube a call. They will have the solution for you. And even in the past 10 years, the cost of capital has been very, very low. So add that to the fact that local is the new cool, and you have the emergence of a number of startups, not only in the United States, across Latin America, across industries, across many spectrums of the economic agenda. And what that drives is a hyper-fragmentation of the environment that we live in. And finally, and this one you know very well as well, that the audience has no tolerance for something that is not relevant today. If I bore you for more than 5 seconds, your eyes are on your phone. I can bet you that. That is true for every single person that you reach with your content out there. iOS 12 reminded me, congratulated me this past Sunday, that I spent only 2 hours and 37 minutes every day last week on my personal phone. Now, I sleep for around 8 hours, work for 10, that leaves me 6 for whatever else I do. I don't think I should be congratulated for spending half of it on my personal screen. But yet I do. But the point is, ask me how many commercial messages I personally remember from those 2 hours and 37 minutes, and I can tell you, none. And I'm a marketer. I live with that. I remember nothing. The clutter is unimaginable. Advertising doesn't compete with advertising. Advertising competes with political campaigns, fake news, my nephew's picture, puppy video. So if you don't really create content that matters at the core, puppy video will beat you every time. They're too cute not to be beaten. You better be better than puppy video. Look, I really like this particular slide, and it's not mine, it's from someone else, but I think it summarizes that people, they don't care about what you do. They couldn't care less. Their lives are too complicated, their lives are too busy. But they might care about why you're doing it and how you're doing it. Remember all the 5 things that are changing. They might just care about that. You probably read, many of you read How Brands Grow, right? It's amazing, probably the best marketing book I've ever read, and certainly the best in the past few years. How Brands Grow talk about the principles of physical availability and mental availability and how that drives penetration over time. I would like to suggest there's a third dimension to that, something around heart availability, visceral availability, about the connection with your audience that is not mental anymore, but is all driven by a sense that I need to be part of this because I understand why you're doing it. Now, as I was telling you, I work at Pepsico, and Pepsico, you may ask, what does Pepsico have to do with all of this, right? Well, it turns out a lot, right? So some 10 years ago, our then CEO, Indra Nooyi, launched a strategy. I would call it a visionary strategy called Performance with Purpose. Performance with Purpose is particularly brilliant because it ties financial performance to sustainability advancements, right? So it turns out it breaks down into 3 things: products, planet, and people. Products is all about expanding the nutrition and healthier options of our portfolio. Planet is all about taking care and taking responsibility of the different aspects of our environmental footprint, the water impact, the agricultural impact, carbon emissions, plastic waste, and how do we create the metrics and the systems that help us to be not only in control, but being part of the solution. And finally, people. where it is all about internally and externally advancing respect for human rights, diversity, women's advancement. And the last one is actually very important as well, the idea of taking responsibility about prosperity of the whole value chain. Remember, we're an agro-industrial business, right? We have strong relationship with potato farmers, oats farmers, coconut farmers around the world. It is our responsibility that they have a sustainable business model together with us. Let me dive in a little bit into products, because I want to explore some achievements on this area. And I actually think that PepsiCo could speak even more proudly about this. I think the product dimension is one based upon talking about sugar, sat fats, and sodium. In the past few years, PepsiCo has reduced in its snacks portfolio the amount of saturated fats in 32%, the amount of sodium in 55%. And today in Latin America, 58% of our beverages are 100 calories or less. I think that's a fantastic progress. We're very proud of it. We don't think we're at the end point yet. We have very ambitious metrics up until 2020 and 2025. We're going to go get them. But it's not only about that. It's about expanding nutritious options such as Quaker, Naked, Tropicana to more people in Latin America and in the world, but also doing it in a way that we offer taste, nutritious options that increase the amount of positive nutrition people take every day. And we don't stop that. And I'm particularly proud of this one, which is a program that was born and raised in Latin America, and it's called Nutrition for the Future in Latin America. And it's all about educating for better health habits, giving access to nutrition, and the idea of self-sustaining farming. And we're investing over $7 million until 2020 to benefit over 30,000 people across the whole Latin America, Argentina, Chile, Guatemala, Dominican Republic, Mexico. I forget the others, but it's all across the entire region, really, and the Caribbean. So I've talked about purposeful, the idea that purposeful content, good content is not enough, purposeful content is necessary in the changing world. I talked a little bit about what PepsiCo is doing about it. Let me take you through one of the brands I work on, which is called Quaker, right? Now, I joined PepsiCo and I joined this particular role 1.5 years ago. 1.5 years ago, we went with the team on a journey to ask, what is our role into this journey of performance with purpose with PepsiCo? What is Quaker's role into that? And to do that, we first went into the definition of the word purpose, which led us to the question, why do we deserve to exist in the world today? It's a very challenging question to answer because the usual answer is to make money, and I pitch you the thought that that is not enough. We went back to the founder of Quaker Oats, so I'll give you Henry Parsons Cromwell. Cromwell lived in the United States in the 19th century, and this was a period of major change in the United States, right? You have a rising working class from the Industrial Revolution. You had flows of immigrants coming into America, and you have a lot of nutrition challenges into that period of the country history. Parsons saw that there were many nutrition deficiencies, and he went out with this in mind, the idea that the circumstances of life shouldn't be a barrier to good nutrition. And he found a solution in this guy here, which is the oat. Now, I am not a nutritionist, nor I pretend that I'm a total specialist in nutrition. But I'll tell you what I've learned about the oat, right? You see that sort of lightly shaded area in the middle? That is the starch, right? That is the carbs. That is the energy. You need the energy. You need the carbs to go through your day. Every grain have carbs, right? That's why you eat bread. That's why you eat other grains. What other grains don't have is the little area around the starch. That's called oat bran. An oat bran is a soluble fiber. Soluble fiber is a great news to your body because when you eat the calories, the starch, with the soluble fiber, basically your body takes longer to absorb it, right? And when that happens, your blood sugar, your glucose on your blood actually is managed in a much better way. It lasts for longer. You feel filled for longer, right? So you have healthy calories filled for longer. Soluble fibers are also famous for another thing. Anybody? Digestion. They're good for your gut. So you actually have a healthier digestive system. And finally, soluble fiber has an ingredient called beta-glucan. And beta-glucan is actually an ingredient that helps lower your cholesterol. So you have this amazing, amazing oat. Parsons Crowe actually start growing it, milling it, creates Quaker oats. We're now here, and what do we do with it? Now, oats are an amazing product, and you know what? Everybody knows about it. I don't have to tell you that oats are healthy. You didn't came here to hear that. Everybody knows about it, all across the media, which was actually my next slide. It's all across the media. It's very famous, right? So we have a founder who is a visionary with a product that is a super grain with amazing properties such as lowering cholesterol, give you fulfilling energy, and helping your digestive health. And everybody knows about it. At this point, we said, this is amazing. This is going to be a walk in the park. Everybody in Latin America must be eating oats. Yet not, right? Yet not. Latin America ranks very low in the consumptions of oats across the world. Any idea why? Do you see any pattern in this slide that gives you a hint of why? If you're thinking about the guys on the left, right side, on the other side of the slide, you will see that they're all on the majority English-speaking countries, right? And it turns out that oats were made popular in the world through the British Empire, right? Through the expansion of the consumption of porridge. So it's part of habit, mostly in the English-speaking world. There are other places as well. It's very popular in Russia. I'm not going to test that point at this particular point in time. But Latin Americans, they know about oats, right? It's kind of lost in their memory structure somewhere, right? They know it's healthy. They don't know exactly why. They certainly don't know how to eat it, right? Because cooking oatmeal in the morning is not part of their morning habits. And then that was the moment we said, that is it. That is the space where our content can be truly purposeful, right? Because if we can help through our actions and our content to increase the nutrition intake, the quality of nutrition intake of existing rituals of Latin Americans, we will be helping this continent to have a better health, right? So instead of teaching people how to eat oatmeal, let's basically teach people how they can add the benefits of the Quaker supergrain into their diets. That has driven a disproportionate investment from our side in simple, granular content, such as recipes, tips, partnerships with publishers, and how you can incorporate the benefits of the Quaker oats into your breakfast. That recipe, I strongly recommend. Have it. It's wonderful. Available online. We also thought about how do we do big impact of that, and from that came the Oatery. The Oatery is a pop-up restaurant that lives on the same premise, right? That you can actually increase the nutrition intake of your morning rituals through amazing recipes cooked by local chefs in this environment and experience that celebrates the supergrain and celebrates Quaker's heritage. And I think this is particularly interesting because not only we impacted the people that went to the restaurant in São Paulo, Mexico City, and in Trancoso, Bahia, my particular favorite, but we also got a lot of talkable content out of the big impact, right? How do you generate enough partners and enough media contacts to leverage the fact that you have this amazing experience? We saw the ROI of this particular activity be $10 on the dollar, so 10 times ROI, very positive returns. And if you're really serious about it, you don't stop on your media content. You actually work on your product content. There is no reason why we shouldn't be adding more food groups to people's morning rituals. And this is one example of a launch in Mexico and Chile when we added nuts and seeds and fruits into a product we call Quaker Superfoods. Delicious, advertising break, try if you can. But you agree with me that the mission is not completed until, if you're really serious about your purpose, until we reach everyone. I had the privilege to know this woman in Chiapas She has 2 kids, and they are both nutritionally challenged. The amount of resources that over 40 million people live with in Latin America don't allow them to have the nutrition intake that they need for healthy growth and healthy lives. And if we're serious about the purpose of helping to increase the nutrition intake, we need to help them to change their lives. So with that, we're actually very proud of this particular product and the content we generate behind it, which is not very media visible. It's very granular. It's about being present where they are, being available where they are for the price that these people can pay. And it's all about, again, based on oats, with a blend of other cereals, fortification for their specific nutrition deficiencies at a price they can afford. And our commitment is to get to 1.2 billion servings by 2020 through this particular line across Latin America. So in summary, we know about this changing world. It's emerging. I think when we bring everything together, you realize that good content is not going to cut through. Purposeful content will go through. In order to create that, you need to understand yourself. It's not the marketer job alone. This is the whole company job. And you have to stand for what you believe. And finally, once you do that, you have to walk the talk. For us at Quaker and at Pepsico, it's been a journey. And it's still a journey. And if I do the presentation 6 months down the line, you will see, what else have we added to this? It became really our beacon. It became our destination. And yes, in the process of that, we will deliver our financial results. But I'll tell you what, we will deliver our financial results because of it. We will deliver great impact because of it. And I do care about my distribution strategy, but now I know that whenever I get those hits, I'm getting with the right content that will help change people's lives. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Very cool. Thank you very much. We're going to do some questions. So we're going to have a look around. Who wants to ask a question or clarification on what you just heard? Because I have plenty, but I want to leave the room to you. It's your room. Okay, I'll kick it off. So you started, one of your early slides was a slide that talked about why. It's one of my favorite questions. I learned it from my son when he was 5 years old. He asked a lot of why. Go brush your teeth. Why, right? So why? I think you talked a little bit about it. It will drive the business. It will actually deliver the business. Is that the why? And is that the reason why you're doing this? Or talk a little bit about the why.
Well, I think there are certain angles, right? I think the angle number one is this is where our target audience is going, right? Think about your own. Habits about eating food and beverage. We do that a lot at PepsiCo. We do take into account where are we driving our own families in order to design our own products. I think there's a lot of a personal relationship to what we're designing. I think there is also the other aspect, which is, do we really have an option of not doing it? Why you're doing it? Yes, it drives financial results. And at PepsiCo has driven in the past 10 years. I think the numbers speak for themselves. But more than that, I don't think we'll be able to be in business in 10 years if we don't do it. So I think that's the most compelling argument. It's just, actually there's a burnt bridge behind us. We better just move forward.
The actual reason is actually a commercial reason.
Well,
it helps, but it helps people, but it's actually, you don't have a business if you don't do it.
Correct. That's what makes it sustainable, I would argue, right? That the fact that it's commercially viable is what makes it sustainable over time. That's why it cannot be CSR. It cannot be only CSR, should I say. It cannot be just, marketing, with the cause. Because if it's not driving the business, the next brand manager will kill it. Let's put it that way.
All right. Anybody else want to ask a question? See, it's not scary. I can do it too. Yeah. Microphone right behind you. There we go.
I try in English. Español. Construir un nuevo momento de consumo o cambiar un hábito es muy costoso. ¿Cómo están haciendo esto?
The short answer is de a poquito. No, I think you're right? So we have, now that's where metrics kick in, right? So we actually have quite robust modeling to understand which tactics can drive a higher increase on per caps at this point. We've been doing this for roughly 1.5 years. We created way more recipes and tips and assets that we can possibly distribute, partially because there's been a lot of early testing, early learning, and understanding what people get engaged and what people want to do. I think the other part of it is being very wise about context placement, the role of search, the role of searching different channels, the role, we're now experimenting with, a few things on search in YouTube, for instance, and recipes on YouTube and context building. And the more context there is, the higher the ROI. What we've seen is that the ROIs for everything that we get with the right context is 3 to 4 times higher than, broadcast ROI. So it's costly, but it's paying back, is what I will tell you. It does require investment, though. It doesn't happen just out of thin air.
Yes. Right here. Thank you, Stephanie.
Hi. I wanted to ask you, you said that in PepsiCo there's a new vision, so you're reformulating products and it's a new way of doing business. And at Disney, I work at Disney, we are in the same path. And I'd like to know if you can tell us which are the main challenges that you're finding or resistance inside the company or even outside in consumers, because taste is also something that consumers want, healthy and tasty, and sometimes it's not that compatible. But I'd like to know which are main challenges that you're finding in this new vision of the company.
Look, I think if it was easy, if anybody could do it, right? I think it is very challenging. And I think you pointed, Zach, at the sort of central point of the issue, which is consumers move and change in different paces around the world, in different demographics, in different psychographics, right? And there are groups of consumers who are completely into healthy snacking, for instance, right? And will compromise taste for healthy snacking. Whereas there's another group of consumers on this end who actually won't, right? Are very interested in taste. And therefore, portfolio is part of the answer, right? How can we offer what people want to eat and over time increase and expand our nutrition portfolio with healthier choices, right? So it's not about disrupting our relationship with the audience, but actually moving with and maybe slightly ahead of our audience so we can pull them with us. That is, I think, the way I would say it. But definitely, how do you get that pulse? Absolutely the right pulse is the difficult thing. Because if you move too fast, the audience stays behind. Oh, I don't like this food. Bye. You're out of the consideration set. You move too slow, your competitor do it for you. So it's really absolutely the right pulse and portfolio, and expanding into healthier options will be, I think, the way we're framing it.
Anybody else? What kind of infrastructure do you have in your team that does all this? I mean, obviously you got people that design the brands and the flavors and all that, but what is the marketing construct that helps you do this? What kind of a team is it?
It's a great question because, in these days, I don't think you can even look internally only anymore, right? So and I wouldn't call it even a marketing structure, right? So there are some people who do marketing, some of them in the audience today. Thank you for coming. And they're driving some of this content. I think there's a lot of people working into the technology that goes behind it, particularly taste technology, processing technology, the environmental challenges. We have a lot of people who go around and understand what's the right metrics and the right people for to partner with. But that leads to the other point, which is the world that is so complex, we cannot rely on our resources alone. We have to find partners that do this with us. So between communication agencies, media agencies, universities, technology partners, we're looking at ways of getting basically the best practice out there and bringing inside. It's very fluid. It's very different from 10 years ago, where I can walk into a department and say, oh, he does that, she does that. Today it's kind of international and multifunctional, and I think to the point, it is not marketing's role to do that. I have these amazing people at PepsiCo that work in nutrition science, which I can spend my whole day talking to them. They're passionate nutritionists, right? And they're a big part of the equation. And yes, they also tap into external resource to help them. So it's really fluid.
Awesome. We are just about out of time, I think. Somebody have a quick last question? If not, then we're going to thank Ricardo for his presentation, and we're going to set up for the next.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Awesome.